So, today we want to quickly, because we had so many lightning talks, cover a topic that we haven't covered before. It's routing, Angular routing. What is a router? A router is a component that takes the URL of the page and turns it into HTML. So essentially it enables us to use the browser's URL bar to navigate within our Angular application. This is what Angular routing is all about. And essentially, it's not very difficult. I have created a short demo app. You can create it on your own, but you can just follow along here. I used ng-new, so the Angular CLI, to set up this application. And this time I created a routing module. And as you can see it here, the routing module is a second module that is then imported in our main module. So here we have the main module, and see, here we import the routing module. This is the default in an Angular application. The routing module itself, let me quickly start my noting tool here. The routing module itself contains of the router module, which is loaded from Angular, and the router module uses a route collection to control the routing. Let's quickly set this up in a very simple fashion. Let's use the Angular CLI to ng generate component, let's say customers. Let's generate a customers component. And let's generate a customer details component. Just so we have two components. They don't do many things. They are pretty simple. So now we have a customers component and a customer detail component. And we would like to set up routing for these two components. I will now write down the routing specification, and I think I don't have to describe anything because it's pretty obvious and pretty easy to guess from the context. What I say path, customers, please go to the component, customers component. If the user types in customers/ID, please note that this is a variable part of the UI, of the URL. As you can see, because of the colon here, it is not a fixed string, but it is a variable part. We would like to go to the customer details component. What we finally can do is we can do things like, if we have an empty string, and if it's really only an empty string, this is why we are telling path match full. Not just a part of the string is empty, but everything is empty. Then please redirect to customers. You get the idea? Not difficult, is it? This is just the routing specification. This routing specification is, as I mentioned before, now imported by the router. What does the router do with it? If we take a look at app component TS, then we will see a bunch of demo text. We can get rid of it, but the most important one here is the so-called router outlet. Before the router outlet, we could, for instance, say h1 welcome, put a kind of, I don't know, header, and down there we can say this is a paragraph, and this is the footer with some copyright by, and so on. And in the middle, the router will add the part that is relevant for the specified URL. So if I go into my application here, then you see we have the header. We are currently in the customers route, therefore we see the customers component, and down there we have the footer. If I now change the route to, for instance, customer/99, something like this, then, as you can see, we now see customer details instead of customers. This is the idea of routing. Understand? Okay. We are not finished yet. But it's not getting very much more complicated. So, yeah, it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. let's think of the customers here. Let's change the thing a little bit. Let's do a customer list, something like this. Add a list item. Let's do that one. And so that we have some demo data, let's put in some public customers is an array of elements with name. That is our customer 1, and it has an ID of 1. And let's add 2 others. This is the customer 2, and this is the customer 3. This is customer 2, and this is customer 3. Nice. So we have some demo data to play with. If we go to customers, we can use a star ng4. Remember ng4? Everybody? Yeah, I thought so. Let's see in customers, and display the name. So, if we go back to the customer list, we should now see customer 1, 2, 3. And now I would like to turn them into a URL. Pretty simple. What do we usually do? Well, we use an anchor tag. Let's do that. Anchor tag href equals to Now, what could we do here? Well, we could say c.id. Get the idea? Let's give it a try. So if we do that, hyperlink 1, oh, the URL doesn't work like that. So we can't just say CID. We could say customers/CID. Let's see if that works. Better. See that one? But still, this is not what we want to have. Because if I now turn on the developer tools here on the right hand side, and if I go to network, and if I go back and click on customer 3, and I go back and I click on customer 1, then you see on the right hand side that the system is constantly reloading the whole HTML application from the server. And in Angular we are building single page apps. We exactly want that not to happen. That's the difference of a single page app to a classical app. We want to load the whole program in one go, and from that on we don't want to talk to the server at all, except if we want to do some REST API calls. So we have to change them. And it's pretty simple to change. We can here replace href with router link. Just remember, instead of href, use a router link. And this can be used for data binding, as we have already learned. The square brackets mean it's a data binding, and then we can say, please navigate to the subroute CID. And if we now take a look what's going on, click on 1, did you see? No loads from the server. Back, no loads from the server. 2, and this is now really pretty fast. This is exactly what we want to have. You get the idea? Difficult? No. Is it? Very good. Last but not least, we are now here in the customer details. Yes. And we want to display some base data about the customer. This is customer number. How do I get the ID of the customer? I need to somehow be able, inside of a TypeScript file, to access the data of the current route. Because if you remember, in the current route, we had the ID. So I would like to get the data of this thing out. Okay? We could now talk for hours how this works in details and so on, but I would like to give you enough information, let's say a survival kit for getting data out of the URL, but I will not tell you all the details because we are pretty limited on time today. This is enough that you will be able, definitely will be able to easily cover in the exam. So what we need to get is a service which is called activated route. Activated route is also a part of Angular's router. See that one? The activated route allows us to access the route parameters because it gives us route.param, a so-called param map. And inside of the param map, we have the ID. So wouldn't it be easy if we just take .get ID and everything is done? Yes, that would be easy, but unfortunately it isn't that easy because param map is param map is an observable. Async programming. You know why this is observable? Imagine that you have the customer details page and then you add a button. Next button, next customer, previous customer. So you stay on the customer form, on the customer component. The only thing that changes is the ID. Why should Angular completely reload the customer page and every time rebuild it from scratch? Doesn't make sense. And this is why it is an observable. It could happen that the ID changes all the time. In simple applications, like the ones we are now building, we don't have these next and previous buttons. So we can simplify the world a little bit, and it works like that. You subscribe, you will now get the maps without the observable, and you could, for instance, do the following, and you have that now on video, or maybe you want to write it down. It's also a variant in my slides. We can say public ID, and then we can just say this.id equals to map.getID. And that's all we need to do. Sorry, it's a string. Get it? Yes, I know this subscribe might seem in the moment a little bit over-engineered. It would be nice if we don't have to deal with observable, but it is like it is. Angular has to deal with complex scenarios too. In our case, we can simplify our life. We are subscribing, so we get the original ID parameter at the beginning when the customer form is loaded. For everything else, we just essentially ignore it, or we just transfer it also in the ID parameter. Get the idea? Approximately? Take this as a cooking recipe for now, and we will discuss it in details maybe in a few weeks. Now we can go into the customer details component and we can just say, show me the ID. See? This is customer 2, go back. This is customer 3, go back. This is customer 1. This is exactly what we want to have. Now that we got the ID, we can maybe use a REST API to download additional data that we can display for this specific customer. Understand the principles? So the things that we need is we need to initialize the project. When we say ng-new with routing, we need to specify the routes in the routing module. We need to add the router outlet so that the router knows where to inject the dynamic parts. And we can use the param map of the activated route in order to get to the items. Okay? I have a homework for you, where you can try that on your own. So let me quickly log in and open it. There it is. Oh no, I'm in the A now, right? This is the right one. So this is the classroom link with which you can try the homework. I really, really want to ask you to work on this homework. I can guarantee you, if you manage to fulfill this homework, you are pretty well prepared for the exam next week. If you just have the time to work on one thing for the exam next week, do this homework. It contains creating an Angular application, adding components, using a REST API, and a simple use of the router. The only thing that is not inside of this example that might come next week, I haven't written the exam yet, is two-way binding. So this is just one-way binding. So please remember the bananas in a box, can you remember? So this is something that might also come. But it is a very good preparation for next week's exam. What is it? What is the homework all about? Let me quickly show you the readme file. Oh, wrong here. This is the router. I thought it would be good to revisit an API that we already know, like our good old Pokey API. And essentially, I would like you to create a new Angular application that displays a list of all Pokemons under a certain route. And please use the Angular router, that's important. Every Pokemon has to be a link to the Pokemon details. And as you can see here, you have your route with the ID parameter. And it displays some detailed data. I suggest the ability names. Okay? So I want to navigate through the Pokemons. Please read the specification. It's not as trivial as it seems on the first sight. Okay? There are a few gotchas in this example, not too complicated. So I think if you spend 3 hours on this example until next week, it shouldn't be a problem for everybody of you to create this example. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. Please do not use Stack Bliss when you prepare for the exam. You can for the homework, but I would not recommend it. Try it locally, because next week at the exam you will have to work locally. It's not sufficient to use Stack Bliss. Okay? And if you want to earn an extra point, just finish the homework, send me a link to a working copy on the internet that I can try, and you can earn an extra point for your grade. Good? Now we stop the recording.